Good morning and welcome to the latest Horizons. So June 2026, man. So I'm David. I'm one of the directors and co-founders of Altair, and this is
Lyndsey, and I'm the other director and co-founder.
Awesome. So I know I say this every time, so it's worth, even if you've been to many Horizons previously, or if this is first, it's worth kind of noting. The whole point of Horizons is about you. It's about an hour to be massively selfish and think about you. So today, what we're going to go through is all of the kind of changes that are happening in the next 12 to 18 months across all the kind of major channels. As we go through this, we've got so much to go through. So we're going to go through this rapidly. So if we move on to the next slide, so we actually get into some of the content. So WhatsApp. So for those of you that aren't joined to our WhatsApp, you should absolutely scan this wherever your screen is right in front of you right now for your QR code. So we've been running this for probably about 6 months now. And it's full of interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, every week there'll be a few kind of little short snippets of news that you should be aware of. Really interesting things about releases like TikTok Go coming out, updated stats on conversion rates of like how AI search is doing versus standard search, or how many people are dark sharing, like 75% of people dark sharing. So loads of stuff is like hidden in WhatsApp and things like that. So those kind of like little nuggets that are going to be really useful every day. And then also one kind of longer read, deep dive into something that's really interesting. So not a huge amount. It's in a great place that's not interruptive on your WhatsApp, but it is a very useful 5 minutes of your time.
So get involved. So let's move on to what we're actually talking about today. But before that, important stuff. So probably, I don't know if everyone knows this, but probably most people do, but everyone should, is that we're actually award winners. And the reason that we've won loads of awards, we've done awards all of the time. But the reason that we're actually really proud of this is, one, it's a big award, it's Performance Marketing Awards. But it's also the AI Awards of the Performance Marketing. And we build all of our tech in-house. So this is all us. And that's why we're really, really proud of this one. So do you want to talk about why we're so amazing on this?
Well, I think the best thing about this is we've talked about this in these sessions as well, about the importance of human and AI working well together. And that's what has been recognised with this. The way that we use our agents as an operational support to our team to look for those little levers and little nuances to improve campaigns is what was recognised in this one, because we were able to really kind of sweat the money that we're spending for our client come alive for this entry. And it's something that we want to be doing for all of our clients, because it makes everything that you're doing just so much more enhanced and better.
And also, this wasn't just a volume play either, right?
No,
so it wasn't about, because there's only a finite amount of tickets. So it wasn't, we want to sell more. It was actually, how can we actually drive more value, more revenue, not only for Come Alive, but actually also for that end user as well. So actually, it was more of a quality and revenue play rather than volume play.
And looking particularly at like flat spots over a week, or like where there might be slight capacity pushes that we can really do. So you're spending to push.
Marginal gains.
Really,
Absolutely.
really good.
Cool. All right. So now let's move on to what we're actually supposed to be talking about. So today's agenda, as I said, this is going to be rapid. We're going to be fast flowing all the way through these. We're going to kick off with LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's going to be our first focus, because actually LinkedIn is massively underrated, but we'll get to that in a minute. Connected TV, obviously CTV, we've talked about a reasonable amount over the months and quarters that we've been doing this. But actually there's some interesting stuff that's happening in the world of CTV that people should know about in terms of that kind of e-commerce journey and things like that. Then we go into the world of Google, TikTok and Meta. So from a Google point of view, data is going to be so important. So we're going to be talking about that a lot. And also one thing that we've been talking about for the last 2.5 years, is ads in the AI bit. Mm-hmm. And actually there's some really good examples of that now that we're going to show on that. And then TikTok, that's really interesting as well. One thing that we've also been talking about for years and years and years is, from our research, is that the younger generations are using the likes of TikTok for their search. And actually TikTok's made a major play into that as well. So we're going to cover that off as well, and also into that local market. And then finally, all of the changes Meta, like launching new platforms and all sorts. So there's a lot going on. So let's dive in. Let's go rapid fire.
Speed.
Right, let's go. Next one. So kicking off with LinkedIn. So obviously this is something we've seen on Instagram, we've seen on TikTok, so that kind of marketplace for influencers and creators. LinkedIn's getting involved in that now. And I think with their push for video, which has been over the last year or so, it kind of massively fits that. That kind of authentic content that LinkedIn's kind of driving. And also bear in mind, from the AI-ness, is that LinkedIn is one of the most cited authorities when it comes to AI citations as well. So that's kind of worth keeping in mind when talking about these things, because actually influence is going to be a massive part of that, right?
Yeah, and as you can see on the image there, it's what they're doing is kind of catching up with the TikToks and Instagram kind of creator hubs so that you can find people with the right kind of skills. B2B has really kind of gone fast in its catch up of creator usage, and thought leaders is how we kind of always talk about it. And it's been something that's been an important part of B2B for a very, very long time. But actually now the ability to kind of really scale, we're seeing B2B marketers who are kind of jumping on this, their performance is much, much stronger, much better. And actually the way that they can use it, because B2B is kind of always on, actually it means that they can really nurture those relationships with influencers, and it looks a lot more genuine, and they can have a much more greater wealth of content and depth of story, which is the whole point of the influencers, because it's that real word of mouth and authority that comes across with it. So it's really great to see that the category is, and that kind of opportunity is available for a sector that really kind of would benefit so much more from it.
Yeah, and I also think that it's probably worth shouting out the really, as you mentioned, the really good thing that B2B is kind of leading on is also the fact it's just proper advertising, right? It's actually what we're doing is lots of little nudges, but over a longer period of time to change behaviors, which is the point of advertising, rather than sending, right, we've got a 4-week campaign, what can we do? So I think actually having that as that kind of drip feed is actually really good for changing long-term behaviors.
Yeah, but even for clients who are not B2B and a B2C, people's peers are their world of work.
Yeah.
So there's a real opportunity to even think about this from a B2C perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, actually, how do you get like-minded people who are interested in similar areas and fields to be promoting your product, event, activity, whatever it might be, because that's really, really untapped. So it's a huge opportunity to get in first.
Yeah. So if we go on to the next slide, I think that kind of leads on quite nicely that I think the way that people see LinkedIn is pure B2B. Your ad needs to be blue, needs to be boring, put it on LinkedIn. And I think that's massively changed. But before I go into it, I just want a bit of a moment of that animation. I love the animation.
Pause.
Anyway, yes, but going back to LinkedIn. So I do think that it's a massive opportunity for B2C clients to actually start looking at LinkedIn and also the LinkedIn data. So, for example, what we're seeing at the moment is actually actually very, very new, because it's a horizon. It's only happened in the last month or so, or weeks, is LinkedIn connecting up with Prime. So actually using LinkedIn data to drive connected TV, which is going to be a bit of a game changer, not only for B2B, but for anybody that wants that data and use that data.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, from a B2B point of view, is that all of the channels that have been traditionally quite hard to justify getting into, like TV or outdoor, which we've talked about before in terms of being really specific with that. This data kind of partnerships that are now happening have just completely thrown that kind of barrier out now. So the fact that we can start doing Prime TV advertising, knowing that someone works at a certain company or at a certain job level, that's not a breaking the bank amount of investment that's needed then to do that. It's ABM, but with TV advertising. And so for B2B advertisers, that's gold. Really. Yeah. So it's really, really cool. And like you said, like B2C, again, we do a lot where you're trying to get people who have a certain affluence level or a certain area. Like job roles are a really key part of that. So
yeah, so if you work in, like, even obviously, you work in certain roles, certain industries within Manchester or Leeds or London, and you want them to come to an event, come to a show, come to an exhibition, that LinkedIn data is going to be gold. And I think, it's a massively underrated and overlooked channel, really. But let's move on from LinkedIn to actual CTV. So this one here is actually quite interesting. So this is where the technology is moving on. Obviously, it's very at the beginning of that bell curve at the moment, but it's actually an interesting kind of evolution where actually when you're watching something on TV, you click your remote control and it goes straight into your basket in your mobile device to go buy stuff. So it's an immediacy there, which is going to be quite cool.
The stats for it so far is that 15% of 18 to 24-year-olds are doing this. So that's a really strong adoption already. When we were kind of looking into this, I think the biggest thing was more like, how does this actually work? And so just from a practical perspective, we thought it was worth talking through the practicalities of how you'd actually get this to set up. So it would be a standard TV ad. And then on an element of the TV ad is an option to click to add to basket. From a back-end perspective, if you're doing any kind of shopping, Google shopping, Meta shopping, Instagram shopping, and you've got a feed, and a shopping feed, that's all that's needed to then power it. So as with those kind of platforms, if this product is out of stock, it just wouldn't pull up the add to basket option. So all of that kind of ability to be dynamic is part of it. At the moment, really, Prime is the most useful place for this to work, because Amazon Prime, if you're watching something on Amazon Prime, obviously it knows your account. So if you click add to basket, it'll go into your Amazon basket. It's a really seamless user experience. But I think Roku, Samsung, if you've got kind of any of the paid TV options where you've got your card set up on your TV already, they also can start to do it. So I think that's probably a smaller segment.
Yeah.
But
probably
again,
a growing one as well.
will be growing. And it's, Prime is still big. And there's obviously we just talked about Prime and LinkedIn. So there's lots of opportunity there. And yeah, that's kind of how it works. So it's from a setup perspective, if you're already doing shopping in an e-commerce way, this is absolutely something that will be possible for you to add to your TV activity.
Absolutely. And because it's at that start of the bell curve, that kind of innovation bell curve, actually there's other things you can do now that's actually a bit more in the middle of like pause ads, QR codes and things, right?
Yeah, and probably everyone here has started to see a lot more of those pause ads with the QR codes on it. That's obviously taking you straight to whichever space. So from a UX perspective, you've probably got a bit more control with that. But obviously it's a static ad, so it's not going to have the same emotional power as a TV ad would have. But it's definitely a good way to dip your toe into actually getting people to see a TV ad and do something immediately off the back of it.
And also this isn't just about, say, Netflix or Prime or anything. So ITV are one of the leaders in things like pause ads, and that's actually a really interesting space as well.
Do you know, it's like the red button. Do you remember the red button?
I love the red button. Do you know, when I used to work in TV, I used to do loads of red button stuff. I used to love putting a red button on. I don't know. Do you remember CFAX? What happened to that? Teletext. What happened to that?
I love Teletext.
Oh, man. Yeah. I can't remember what we're talking about now. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, straight to cart. All you need to do is press your red button. That would probably work. Yeah, so let's go on to the next slide. Looking at things not in isolation. So there's a load of stuff that we can start talking about here. So what we're talking about here actually is something that we've done quite a lot of in terms of connecting up devices. So here, obviously, connected TV and how we can connect that to your mobile. Actually, it's one of those things that we should really be talking more of, because regardless of the channel, we'll go into more detail about this in shortly. Actually, one of the things that we talked quite a lot about, we've done actual conference talks on it, we've done lots of content on it and things like that, in terms of now with the world of AI and machine learning and kind of raising all of these kind of interesting data points, actually that mixed media modeling is really, really important now, not letting the CTVs or Metas or Google mark their own homework. So I think this kind of cross household device tracking is really, really important to get right, but then also have the MMM stuff over the top to make sure you know the cause and effects of it.
Yeah. And from a kind of, again, like being able to actually run activity and track this, we've been doing this now for a little while. We've talked about it before with the connected TV side of things. So we started with one of our client ships with Globe last summer as a bit of a test, being in first to market with it, which was great. And the ability to track those households then actually going through to buying tickets and then optimizing to a channel level, kind of almost on, as you would with any kind of digital activity, has been a bit of a game changer for, again, TV being a channel that we can justify taking budget from other channels to do more of. But it again spreads to other channels as well. So we've been talking about like outdoor and how to push that. We've just, again, with that same client, because it's the data that we're kind of using, we're doing it where you've got the mobile device goes past an outdoor screen as the ad is showing. We then know that mobile device has seen the outdoor ad. We then know that's part of the household. We then can see when they go down to the destination or online. So it's all kind of connecting together, and that's all possible now. So even if you're not, media mix modeling might feel like you have to be spending a certain amount of money and get a certain amount of data to do it. Even if you're operating at a level where you just need to be able to rely on kind of in-campaign data sets and optimizing from that, that's now so accessible, and the performances are looking really, really great with it, because again, there's a bit of a first mover advantage, but also people respond more to video type content and things than rubbishy ads.
And I think we've been doing this, as I said, like for over a year, right? And I think all of the stuff we go through in Horizons, that's one of the really important things that we really like about Horizons, is that we're talking about stuff that's brand new, that's only happened in the last days or weeks. We're also talking about stuff that's happening in the next 12 to 18 months. But all of this is massively achievable. Yeah. We just need clients to fill up their hands when we put it in front, because some of these things seem quite frightening and you always want to be second or third to the party. But actually, there's big advantages to be that first mover. And I think this is also big for more than just the B2C side of things. So if we think from a business to business point of view, as we talked about on the LinkedIn Connected TV bit, actually the B2B marketeers are doing a really, really good job now in terms of acting like B2C, actually using some of that kind of really more cutting edge advertising and all of the different channels. So we talked about LinkedIn data into TV, so you can be on the big screen in the living room, but actually we can then track that to see, actually, are they doing anything online? Are they checking you out online? Are they going to your website? So be above and beyond just looking at brand search, impact and things like that. And then talking about the out-of-home stuff. So we do lots of B2B and we do lots of events for B2B as well, where we swamp and dominate an area. So I think we've actually got some stuff live in Berlin doing that at the moment. And we've got some more stuff going live next week on that one. But it's interesting, like swamping those areas. And as you said, where we can connect the out of home up with the mobile device. So we know you've walked past in proximity. We've captured that device ID. And we also know where you work. So we can geofence the HQs. We can catch you on your commute. We can then get you when you get home on your connected TV and things like that. That actually, what could be actually a relatively small amount of money, for that person, you look massive. You look national. You look huge, right? Just by tying up all of those kind of like bringing everything together and integrating that stuff. And I think the really important thing, as we've kind of talked about with all of this stuff, is you don't need huge amounts of money for creative. Don't need to send creative teams to the Bahamas and things like that to do those TV ads. A lot of the media owners will do the TV ads for you and lean into that. And also put it through things like ClearCost to get it signed off and things like that as well. So all of those things are attainable from a budget level, that type of stuff is attainable. And from the tech level, that's what we do. And that's what we work with the media owners and these tech providers to do. So really, the barriers to entry are just your imagination more than anything else, right?
And being brave to try something different, because that's something that, we talk about a lot, where especially Meta and Google, they are very trusted places in terms of like you're guaranteeing a bit of performance there because it's a safe space. So you're going to have to take money. We know that money is always going to have a budget. There's always a cap to how much you've got. Moving outside of those channels is something to be kind of be prepared for and brave to do it, because it's a shift.
And I think the best first step on that journey is turn up to Horizons brave marketers doing new things. Yeah, exactly. Well done, everyone. So if we move on, so away from the household devices. So I've got loads to say about this. So this is actually really quite interesting from multiple levels. So first from like on Altair amazing level, let's start there, is really cool actually, because one of like, so for example, Fabry in our PPC team was chatting to our Google reps. The Google reps didn't know about this and we were explaining this to them and they're finding out more for us, even though we know what we need to do. So what Google's Journey Aware is essentially you're plugging in your CRM data. So let's talk about this from a B2B point of view first, and then we'll move over to how it works for B2C. So from a B2B point of view, you move your CRM data and you pump that into Google. And it knows whether you're at that kind of initial lead. So are you at an MQL, marketing qualified lead level? Are you at a sales qualified SQL level? Have the sales team contacted you? Have you requested more information? Are you now at this lead score threshold? So therefore you're getting closer to the end, or are you right at the very beginning of the discovery phase? All of these things, right? You'll probably have that all in your pipeline. And these are all the things that are eminently easy to not easy, but structurally good to set up. So you push that into Google, so therefore Google knows where each person is within this journey. But then what it can do actually is if we then take that into the kind of the new world of how Google works, that kind of AI mode, Gemini mode, that actually from a B2B point of view, a lot of that first discovery, so we talk a lot about being on the day one list, and we've got lots of content on our site about being on the day one list, that actually before the person, that kind of buy-in customer has even interacted with you, they've already done quite a lot of their discovery part. And if you're not part of that discovery part, you're very, very unlikely to win. I think it's 80% of the people that are in day one list ended up winning. And if you're not on that day one list, the chances of you winning are just like so minute. So being in that discovery phase is key, right? But this is where the paid element starts to come into that Gemini bit, because what the Journey Aware thing does is it kind of matches the context of what someone's saying to the actual outcome. So for example, if you're typing into AI as getting into that discovery phase now, I know I need a financial kind of payroll system. I've got 25 people. I'm based here. You give them a lot of detail. So it's much more kind of richer content going into that AI side of things. And then what Google can do is actually look at the type of things that people are asking, the type of the intent that's behind some of those kind of AI Q&As that are going back and forth, and actually say, well, actually, you're statistically much more likely to end up being a high quality lead if you're saying this type of thing at the beginning versus someone who's like, one thing we get quite, or that is something you have to defend against a lot from a B2B point of view, is things like students doing research, for example. So obviously from an AI point of view, that AI knows whether it's a student or a professional person, and are they doing research in terms of a dissertation, or are they doing research because they're actually in a buy-in phase? All of that context is taken into control, right? And then you're putting your CRM into it so it can say, actually, if you're speaking in this type of intent, you're vast more likely to go to the end. So it's so far removed from the old way of Google, where you might have 3 words in a key phrase or keywords and things like that, that actually now you need all of this context put in, and then plugging your CRM data makes it so much more powerful. So really you're cutting out loads of the fluff. And if you think about the trajectory and the direction we're going in, if you're not lining up your CRM data and putting that into Google nice and clean, it's one of those things that the downward trajectory is probably like everyone's trying to optimize on a downward trend, and you're kind of like dying slowly without realizing it. You absolutely have to get your data in there. Otherwise, in 2 years' time, it's going to be so hard to come back from that.
Yeah. And I think
That's quite powerful.
It's very powerful. And I want to kind of talk about it again, but from a few different sectors perspective, because I think it is so important, but it's hard to understand what it means that you need to do if sort of the B2B world is quite linear in terms of like the different, like the way that marketing is set up. It has got those qualification stages often because it's a long nurture journey. But just to put that into other spaces, so from an events culture kind of art space, we work with a lot of clients in that space. We were at the Museum and Heritage Show a couple of weeks ago, and Alva were talking about research that they've got that shows that families in particular, they're doing all of their research kind of 6 weeks before they go to an event, but they only book within the 24, 48-hour window before they go, if possible. Obviously, if this thing's set out, that's a bit different. But if they could, that would be their preferred kind of journey. So that's because, the weather, child might be sick, whatever it might be. They don't want to really commit if they don't have to until that 24, 48 hours before. So if you're only using data that's looking at the conversion, that's the day one kind of part. You've missed that opportunity. You're just kind of converting the people that were coming anyway. It's that 6 weeks before knowledge that is currently missing in a lot of the way that things are set up at the moment. And what Google's journey aware bidding will do is actually help use that 6 week prior knowledge, so that then when it comes to that 24-hour, 48-hour window, when they're like, right, I am going to London, I am going to go and do something, you are kind of more aggressive in fighting for that person. And so the ways to do that is actually thinking about what are the signs that people are coming to your site in that 6 week prior period that we can give to Google. So are there kind of content pieces that they're looking at? Are there videos that they're watching on the site? Are there things like that we can use as signals that people are warmer than others that Google's in the news? Same with like education as a sector. There are lots of different signals that can be much more similar to B2B, where you've got kind of people interested in open days or people looking at prospectuses. So clients that we've got in all these other different sectors, this is really relevant to everybody. But yeah, I think it is just useful to kind of think about how that might look from your journey, depending on it's that data is the key thing. And a lot of that we can do on your behalf, because it's about getting the site tagging set up correctly and making sure it's passing through. But it's, I think, really important from the client side to be thinking about what they know about their audiences, of like things that show that they're warmer. So that's where B2B is a bit more simple, because they have got that scoring system in place. So a qualified lead means that someone's looked at, is it the right company size? Is it the right kind of person? So they're kind of like writing off the lower quality traffic. Again, going back to education, like the grandparents would be classed as less valuable. It's harder to do that when you don't actually have like logged in data and registered data. It's more signals. And
I think the key point there is that across everything we talk about in Horizons, the barriers to entry are really, really low, right? So there's no kind of real reason. When we talk about data, we need our CRM systems really. There's a lot of apathy and like it's going to be hard, but actually we just need you need to get on with it, because in 2 years' time it's going to be really, really tricky. But actually, it's probably not as hard as you think. And I think it's also lowered the barrier of entry as well, because previously you could do some of this stuff, right, by setting a value to say for different conversion points within Google. You say, right, for someone to actually become that final sign up, I'm going to say that's worth £500 or $500. If that kind of first person that comes in where they've done this type of event, or they've downloaded this, or they've signed up to a newsletter, well, maybe I'm going to put that as $50 or £50, right? So you can start to do that and like assign an arbitrary value. But one, that's a massive faff and actually quite difficult. But two, actually to do that, you need a much higher volume to be able to do that as well. Whereas now with the journey aware bidding, that volume, that threshold's come massively down. So you don't need as many conversion points across that to make the AI work. So it's massively worth it for everyone, regardless of the sector. So if we move on to the next Googling. So agentic commerce and universal cars. So this is interesting. This is more... It's happening now, but this is kind of where everything's going to end up being in the next couple of years, right? So in terms of getting your digital assistant to buy you stuff, so this is something we've been talking about for about 18 months in these Horizons, is massively like a thing now, but also actually capturing it in your universal Google cart to be kind of signed out by Google. So this is kind of a big step forward, right?
Basically WeChat.
Yeah, it's WeChat. It's which is a good thing. I mean, we talked about that about a couple of years ago. A lot of stuff that kind of comes over from Asia. So I think this is the type of thing that we need to start to think about as well. And there's, without kind of talking about stuff that we talked about 2 years ago, but there's a lot of things to think about in terms of, well, if that ends up going into the Google cart and you're not even going to the site, right? So not even like 0-click searches. Now you've got 0-click buys, right? So therefore, how do you work that in terms of the upsell and the cross-sell? You bought this and you might like this type of stuff. How did that all work? Because that's going to impact your overall revenue, right? And then from that kind of universal cart, that might be from 3 or 4 different shops going into it. So you're like in a shopping center in the Google world and you're picking and you basically end up going through from your Google cart. So there's quite a lot that kind of goes on within this. So if anybody's selling anything, so even if it's like a museum shop or anything like that, it could be any level of e-commerce. This is basically the direction of travel, right?
Actually, it's not even WeChat. It's basically Amazon, right?
Mm.
So it's just another that people will be comfortable with because people using Google Pay. And that's what's probably been the biggest shift to opening this up more is people's confidence with using their payment system for a lot of things. So it's going to be a really natural shift for people. So again, it's a bit similar to where we talked about 0-click searches from an AI perspective, is that actually how do you get that story of your brand to make sure that you stand out more? It's not just about being a price competition. That's going to be quite interesting kind of part of the competition and actually goes back to the other channels that we were talking about, because the importance of advertising is going to be so much more because you need to get the demand up there. Fighting within Google is important to get the last conversion and not lose all the people that you've kind of created that demand from. But it means actually you need to kind of look at shifting.
So the other interesting thing about this that is very, very new, in fact, this happened yesterday. So a regulation passed in the UK yesterday, where essentially Google have been saying that they're going to link the AI data back to your Google Search Console. So you can see how many clicks and impressions and what's coming through from an AI, which would be a massive step forward, right? But they haven't done it yet. But they said, we'll do it. But actually, the other thing that's happened, and that's what happened yesterday from the UK government anyway, and this obviously is the type of thing that's rolling out across the EU and things like that, is that the government is saying, well, from a publisher point of view and from a shop point of view or from a brand's point of view, they need to know what's happening here. And also they should have the right to opt out of allowing the AI kind of bots to crawl their site. So they need much more control. So one of the things that's going to happen probably in about 9 months' time, because I think the regulation that happened yesterday have given them a 9-month window to sort this out. And bearing in mind, Google were in that direction anyway, so it's not exactly like a bad thing for Google, is allowing that kind of opt-out. So are you going to allow the AI agents? Because if you think back, was it 6 months ago where we did the Horizon where Perplexity were being sued by Amazon, which is another that kind of battle of the bots type thing, is all of this stuff's on the kind of horizon for the next 9 months. So if you're selling anything, then that's something you need to think about. But also from an AI point of view, in 9 months' time, you should be able to actually start to see where's your traffic being cited, where's the impressions being shown, where are the clicks coming from in your Google Search Console, which would be pretty cool. I mean, it only happened just
Lots of AI audits constantly needed. And that's quite interesting because I think from an SEO point of view, you do an SEO audit and you maybe do that once every few years and it would be like a technical job and then you'd have your kind of content plan. And this is probably something to think about from a budget perspective, because actually making sure that you do allocate some money and time to doing regular AI audits and LLM audits and things, it's actually going to be quite important over the next 2 years, really, because things are changing so quickly. And so where we're working with clients on those kind of things in terms of looking at their visibility, it's so useful to be able to be doing that, but it does change so quickly. So we do need to think about that. I think everyone needs to think about that from a budgeting perspective, to just allow for those regular sweeps.
Yeah, absolutely, which works perfectly as a segue to the next slide. So next slide, please. So this is really interesting. So again, something we've been talking about for years and years and years. Everyone's banging on about, we can advertise in ChatGPT now, but actually Google's still way ahead of the curve, right? So actually there's 2 new ad formats that are kind of bubbling up now from Google's AI side of things. So we've got the conversational ads and the highlight ads. So the really cool thing is we start with the conversational ads. Obviously the AI knows what you're talking about. It's got the context. It knows what you've always thought. It knows everything about you by this point. And you're asking it a question and it can just slide in there. Actually, one of the things you might think about is this. And then obviously have sponsored at the top and it all comes through nicely as part of that kind of almost that integrated part of the chat. And again, there's 2 things that are happening here. One, you've kind of got, are you being cited in the first place? So that kind of AI audit and what you're being shown for, what are the questions and things like that. But then the other thing is actually from a paid point of view, we can now start to slide in there, which kind of goes back to the traditional SEO versus PPC, where actually by doing those audits, you know where the improvements need to come. And you also know how competitive that is, how fast will that actually improvement happen. So actually in the meantime, you can actually prop that with some paid activity and bring that through while you're working on your organic kind of AI side of things. And then the highlighted ads, the one on the right-hand side, is actually a bit more of a drop-in. So it's more, you've got 4 options and then the last option is a sponsored option. But again, this is something we've been talking about for a while, but this is clearly where everything's going. So if you haven't got your CRM data lined up, if you haven't got your AI audits all now down, there's going to be a lot of work to be coming up. And it's the type of thing, so where we're doing all of the AI audits at the moment, one of the interesting things about that is that where we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 months, actually that's about the right time to start to do it, because there's still plenty of time to fix all of this stuff. And you're still going to have that first mover advantage by doing all of these things as well. So now is the best time to actually be doing it, but don't delay.
And I think it's going to be really exciting because, as I said, like one of the stats on the WhatsApp channel was about the conversion rate for AI search traffic. It's like 45% higher than standard traffic. So the quality, because they've had to read all the stuff that's kind of scrolling in front of you before they then get the option to see the ad, then click.
One of the things, the funny things that we put out, right, is that if like taking it to a really kind of niche example, right? So if you're a museum and you're selling something very, very specific, that's the type of thing that people are going to be using AI and having that conversation on, like looking for something like this or the other. If you haven't got your Google Merchant Center lined up properly, if you're not using your CRM data properly, and if you haven't done the AI audits and all of those type of things, all of these type of things properly, then you're going to miss out on something really important, because there's so much context that's put into this and the value. And that's why you've got, was it 45%? Yeah. Why it's so much higher? Because you've kind of done that quality bit first, right? So even if you're selling what you would class as quite niche or specialist things, that means you should definitely be there to make sure you're capitalizing on that, because this is where you get on the day one list, essentially, which is the really important bit. TikTok. All right, let's move into the one of broader social. So again, this is quite good. So this is where TikTok's making more of a play into like Google realm in terms of search and things like that. So we've got branded buzz and search hubs, which are 2 different things. So you've got branded buzz, which is your kind of go out to like 300 creators and they start creating stuff for you, all of those type of things. And then you've kind of got the search hub, which is kind of this example here that you can see on your screen, where actually if you click on the button from the influencer, you can actually then go to an actual brand-owned section. So you actually own that search hub yourself, or you can sponsor a content kind of search hub as well. So going back to what we said right at the beginning, that we know actually as audiences come through and those kind of younger demographics come through, we know they're using TikTok for search. We know they're using Instagram for search and all of these sort of things. So actually this is really big play and an important play and an interesting play from TikTok to really kind of own that space.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, isn't it? Like the life cycle of things, because it is a microsite or whatever you would have done with a publisher kind of in the past. And the reason you would have done those in the past is because you'd have that affinity with the publisher because of what they talk about. And content creators are essentially the new publishers. So it's really good because you can get much more of your brand story, product range across that's like in the official way, but with the authenticity of the kind of content creator in there as well. I think the 300 creator kind of launch thing is also really interesting, kind of similar to, not similar, but what we were saying about the B2B use of thought leaders and how that's like much more ongoing, long-term, more scale to it.
Nudges, micro nudges.
Being able to have like a real almost like takeover of lots of different voices saying something about your product at the same time does make a difference. It's like a massive amplified word of mouth. Obviously, if you were to do that level, that clearly would be a lot of budget. But the concept of doing a kind of really tactical swarming of people talking about something,
I like that.
It's great. But I think TikTok are doing some really interesting things to actually be a bit more creative. So unlike when we come on to Meta in a bit, but what we tend to see often with Meta is that they just steal everyone else's ideas. TikTok are really pushing to do different experiences, and that's why people are liking the experience within there.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's a massive play from TikTok to get involved in the search side of things. And again, it's something that brands need to be all over.
I think at the moment, for a practical perspective, where we've run TikTok search campaigns, and I think that there definitely just needs to be more commitment to it. So if we think about how we talk about PMax when that kind of first came out or such, you commit to it for a number of months and you optimize it, and you know that you need to put enough budget in to have enough conversion data.
And data.
Yeah, and data. And I think because TikTok search is so new, actually often it does need that too. So therefore it needs that kind of commitment to finding a way to make it work. Because where we have done it for clients, it's been more of a dipping a toe in approach. And sometimes that just doesn't make the most of it, really. So it definitely needs to be, if this is the right environment for your audience and where they're now searching. So if you are going for those kind of younger audiences, kind of a commitment to actually.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Momentum's probably the best way to put it, because like if you dip your toe in, obviously what we can do is we can see if there's any green shoots, because green shoots are best to see if anything's moving. But even if once it's proven that actually this is a good idea and we go for it, you've kind of just wasted your money to a degree, because you built some momentum and let that wave foul, where you could have actually pushed and kept it going and build that momentum up, and it accumulates, right? It's that kind of that kind of, I don't know, right? Compound. That's the one. Yeah, well done. Bit of audience participation there.
Well, me.
Yeah. You're the only one in it.
That's true.
Right. Yeah. Next slide. Just talking to the walls. So this is another one, hyperlocal feeds for TikTok. Again, going into that kind of hyperlocal, competing with Google Maps-ish. Foursquare. Whatever happened to Foursquare? They're still about though, right? That's nothing to do with this slide, so don't worry about it. TikTok local. So hyperlocal feeds is going to be really, really important, I think, especially if you've got something going on, because this is all about recency and relevancy. So they're the kind of the two big things, the two R's really on this one. So if it's something happening now or very near the future, and it's relevant and you're in that local kind of part. So this is going to be really, really good for stuff where you know that, actually it goes back to the kind of life thing, right? To a degree, that you know you're going to sell this stuff out. But actually these ones, these kind of, as Dan puts it, that soggy middle or whatever you said, if you've got a long, he talks about soggy middles a lot. So I don't know most of what he's talking about. But anyway, but when you get to those bits, it's like, how do you prop those bits up, right? So so this is going to be one of those kind of important bits that actually, if you know, if you're like holding an exhibition or an event and you know you've got loads of footfall going on and around you and there's a lot going on, actually, how do you get them to actually turn left and come to you? Because there's something really cool happening now, something really amazing is going to kick off very, very soon. Actually, that's only a 20-minute walk away or 10-minute walk away. I'm going to turn left and go in there. This is going to be really, really, really good for that kind of walk-in footfall.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that, there's like maybe free events or, public programming type things that we work on with clients where there's not a ticket needed, and actually that kind of footfall tracking. So at TikTok, I've got something that's more hyperlocal. But even outside of that, we're doing quite a lot with Nextdoor on the hyperlocal side of things. This is kind of looking at taking a bit from that. So we have a number of clients where they only need to be running in a very specific area. So like the work we do is like NHS and stuff like that. It's very specific to a specific borough. It opens TikTok up as a channel because obviously TikTok has been horrific at doing any kind of geographical targeting.
Yeah, there's really
so they've kind of gone from like, we can just do London to having a hyperlocal feed. So it's great. They've just dived straight in there and gone for it, which is brilliant. And I think a big part of it, obviously that search, the fact that we've been talking about TikTok being a search engine for a number of years now, really. The near me type searches that Google have always said is like the biggest proportion, like why Google business is so important to have for that near me type thing. They've just kind of gone for that part of it, which is great because they don't use Google.
So Meta Instance. So as Lyndsey mentioned, one thing that Meta's really good is nicking other people's ideas. So Meta Instance. So this is actually quite an interesting one in terms of how they're trying to go back to the basics, going back to that rawness. So we've written some content on it. We've done some Friday rants on this. If people don't know about our Friday rants, get involved. We're on TikTok, right? Follow us on TikTok, like, subscribe, do that. So we all know, I mean, we're not supposed to be on LinkedIn, but Wendy keeps putting us on LinkedIn. Yeah. Anyway, so Meta Instance, smaller group of people, like your actual core surrounding people rather than huge amounts. So if you think about what Facebook used to be, but what kind of Meta is now, where actually Meta is essentially a big content provider, right? You're watching and consuming content from someone you don't know. They're on the other side of the world. You've never met them. It's akin to watching Netflix to some degree, right? It's that kind of distance. It's not your inner group of people. You're not looking at what other people are doing that are in your circle. Meta Instance brings that back, right? It's that rawer element to that kind of smaller circle of people.
Yeah, and there's a few things that it's interesting doing. Obviously, we're saying about the dark sharing. We've talked about that earlier today. Like 75% of content is dark shared. That's basically your micro communities. We've talked a lot about like WhatsApp groups in terms of like how younger
WhatsApp group, there's a QR code coming up in a minute.
But younger people, they're using WhatsApp much more, and Snapchat is still really big. So it is definitely a play to getting a share of that dark sharing private area. The other thing that's really interesting is that, and the image here is great, that's on the moment like that kind of like lo-fi kind of content. Lo-fi type content, I think we talked about it last time as being, or on our Friday rants, but it's like really kind of taken off quite a lot. And people are engaging with it. It gets like 4 times the amount of like engagement than like more polished ads do. So that also kind of plays into this, of that just like real, much more normal picture of your lunch type thing, and the photo dumps, that kind of thing. Like it's really kind of coming back.
Yeah, and I think we've done quite a lot of content around actually audience are really kind of pulling away from that perfect AI type content and stuff like that. That kind of lo-fi content, as Lyndsey just mentioned, that
Only
people just want to kind of go back. Yeah, I know, right. That's the robots are shaking their heads. But if we move on to the next one, we obviously move on to like forums, so Meta forums. So this is new. This is actually a really quiet launch. I really made a big deal about this. Meta haven't. But this kind of moves into the world of Reddit. So if we put it into context of Reddit, Reddit's one of the most cited things for AI engines and LLMs and things like that. And Meta forums jumping into that by creating lots of communities. And let's be fair, one of the things that Meta and Facebook have been pretty good about is creating communities and things like that. And I think a lot of people, especially like small businesses, use Facebook exactly for that community thing. And forum is going to be that. And I think this is their play to make sure they're owning some of those citations and stuff like that within the AI world.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that, from a marketeer's perspective, because obviously like those communities on Facebook are still really important to real people, but you can't really access them from a advertiser kind of marketing perspective. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on whether there's an opportunity to buy, even if it's just as a signal, because again, they've taken away so much of those signals that we've been able to use previously for targeting, whether this is another way for them to bring stuff back, something to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah, because Instance will definitely do that. But I think also for forum, it would go on to the AI side of things. When we're doing AI reviews, one of the things we talk about in the AI reviews is, where do you need to be showing up? Like, where do you need to be? And I think forums is going to be one of those places where you need to have that authentic kind of setup, kind of where your brand's on forums, talking in the right way about the right things to make sure you're being cited in the correct way.
And if you're a content team, you're probably like, not another platform.
I love that.
Sorry. It's not our fault.
Right, expandable shopper ads. So these are the real stuff where actually you can have like 30 brands within this. You can click straight through. So this is quite an interesting play. Again, like as you said, like that kind of microsite type thing as well, right? So there's a lot of like going back to things that we kind of know, but actually doing it really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, they used to have their canvas ads, didn't they? Which just were a bit clunky and a bit rubbish and never quite worked. But this is, again, it's just going to be really good. I think the interesting thing on this is it's your shop. So, if you think about the different things we've talked about, so with the Google kind of basket, that's in Google. So Google Play, they'll be taking a cut of your spend. There's kind of more commissions there. This one probably less so. So I think even again, from that perspective, like, where do you go first? What do you prioritize? Actually thinking about it from that point of view of, if you get less commissions almost in this environment, that might be a better place to look at, because looking at your overall margin kind of across the board, that's a big part of it, is who's taking what from you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And especially it kind of goes into that bit where there's so many suppliers in that thing, and everyone's taking their kind of their percentages and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a slide from actually December's Horizons, where we talked a lot about Andromeda. So obviously that was 6 months ago when it first kind of came out. Hopefully people have heard of Andromeda, but if not, the whole thing about Andromeda is actually it's the fundamental algorithmic shift from Meta about how it decides whether to raise your ad or not. And obviously post GDPR and all of those type of things, which is obviously a long time ago, but some of the kind of more audience targeting was tightening up on all things Meta. But actually what the Andromeda stuff has done as of 6 months ago, as we talked about, is that kind of really hammering down on the targeting side. So that's kind of makes our job even more important to a degree. It's making sure that we're targeting the right audiences and we're just not going straight into the black box of Meta. And that's a really important point, is that black box of Meta, that lock-in. They want you to give them the URL of your website and a credit card detail so they can create all your ads for you and create all the audiences for you, but you get no levers. And then obviously bringing in the AI side of things, they're also marking their own homework. Like, obviously, for a long time, people believe what Meta's telling you. Oh, we made this much money off Meta. But did you? Because they're marking their own homework, right? So there's a lot going in this. But the reason we're repeating this after 6 months after talking about it the first time is this is now making much more of a drive in terms of the day-to-day performance of Meta ads.
Part of that is, again, thinking about resource is a big part of it, because what they want is lots of creative. So you could use their ticker box and let them do lots of creative, but you don't ever want to do that. And every client we talk to, we talk about that regularly. So then the alternative is making it yourself. And that's at a big commitment. And again, a conversation that we have a lot with clients about what's the priority, what's the kind of assets that should be created. And there are ways to scale certain, like the same asset in a number of different ways. And that's obviously one of the most efficient. But there is a choice to be made. Meta is becoming so much of a time drain from all sides really, because of all of this kind of side of things, that actually we've just talked about so many different exciting opportunities that are still kind of sales focused and being able to trap through to sales and generating genuine kind of connection and new audiences through TV, through outdoor, through the TikTok stuff. That actually, again, with what Meta are doing, I think there is a choice rather than just kind of sleepwalking into just being on busy fools and doing loads of stuff because Meta have told us to do it. It's just to like take that pause and be like, actually, are there other channels that could do a better job, that you have more control of your brand identity within, and you can tell your story in a much more healthy manner?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that we mentioned in December as well was that, I mean, going back to that kind of like you can do quite a lot with similar ads and create more kind of like not clones, but kind of variants of that similar ad. What we talked about in December was actually looking at kind of how the algorithms react to new ads. They essentially pick one of the ads, and unless it's fundamentally different, they kind of focus away from those ads, and they always used to run with one ad. One relatively newish change, a month or so or whatever it is, where we can do now is we can actually start to drive a specific creative, which kind of helps.
Still rolling out, isn't it? As well?
Yeah, it's still rolling out, so it's not across all campaigns, but it kind of helps because if you've got lots of variants that are quite similar, or from an algorithmic point of view, they kind of look very similar, Meta will pick one and drive. But now what we can do as rolling out on beta is we can say, actually, we want to still drive these other ads and force the issue. Whereas before we used to have to do that much more manually, didn't we?
That will make quite a big difference because there are a lot of times in every client and every sector where you have something that's more time sensitive or something that's just been released because it's now only available now, like a trailer or a talk from a webinar that a client's done or something. Whereas because it hasn't got the history, sometimes it can struggle to take the old strong asset out. That ability to push it is great. But at the moment it's not everywhere, but it will be soon. And that will make quite a lot of difference.
So much covered. Obviously, this is all going to be written up and it'll be released in 2 weeks for all the videos as we normally do. If we go on to the next slide, though, I think there's 3 kind of points that are probably be worth from our point of view in terms of things to think about if we were to amalgamate all of these things together. Cross-device is a massive one. So if you're running things on Meta, especially with the Andromeda kind of algorithmic update from 6 months ago, mixed media mesh modeling is massively, massively important. Don't let any channel, whether it's Meta, Google, or anybody, start to mark their own homework. I think that kind of how each channel reacts to each other is now as important as it ever has been. And we obviously talked about it in a very practical way in terms of TV and mobile, or out of home and mobile and devices within households. But I think actually doing that mixed media modeling, which is now in reach of all clients, because we can do it essentially weekly or monthly now with the likes of machine learning and pumping up all this data. So I think cross-device is really important. Get your data sorted. You have to get your data sorted. It doesn't matter if it sounds complicated or you need to get a load of it sounds all of these geeky words and what do I do? How do I link this CRM? Doesn't matter. It's probably easier than you think it's going to be, and it's an absolute necessity, and you have to sort it out. And we can help you as well. So just shout, because there's no barriers to all of these things. And then, Meta wants to be everything. I think it's really, really interesting how they've obviously got Instance, going back to the beginning, going back to that rawness, and to cover that type of thing off, where they moved too much into entertainment kind of as a company and now back into social media. Forums is an interesting one for the AI, EO, GEO stuff. And then obviously all the different places. There's so much going on Meta. It's crazy.
Yeah. And we also have switched the poll to the next question, which is things that you want to be, what is the priority for you? And I think that's quite, obviously have a look at it and answer it, because I think there's, as we said, there's so many things that we've covered. Actually, you can always prioritize within that. So give us a vote. Tell us which things you think are the biggest priority for you. The biggest one was about LinkedIn and connected TV. So I think that's really interesting.
Oh, really?
That was the one that had most votes for people being interested to hear more about it. So we can definitely share more about the targeting that's possible. Probably one of the things that people will ask is minimum spends, I would expect. So we can share that as well in terms of actually how easy it is to access it. So that's good. But I think, as we said, I think it's going to be a really interesting data source to use and to be very, very specific. And obviously GDPR, all that kind of stuff, it's a really powerful way to get to certain types of people and job roles.
Awesome. So that's Horizons for Q2. We'll be doing this again in 3 months. We've got another couple of things coming up that will be going out on our WhatsApp channel. The write-up for this will be going out in a couple of weeks on our WhatsApp channel as well. So sign up to the WhatsApp channel.
Thanks for joining.
Cheers.